The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
Alrighty, hello folks, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Whitfield Report podcast. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, here at Right to Offend Media Studios, and joining me for the podcast this week is Luke Goozdich of the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast and Veritas Entertainment, which will reveal what that is in a sec. Great to have Luke back on the program. Before we begin the show, though, I just want to make a couple quick announcements. We will be having our annual Right to Offend Media Christmas show on Friday, the 20th, 9:30 p.m., I believe. So anyone who can tune into that live stream on Rumble, we would greatly appreciate that. Other than that, just thanks to everyone who has been buying the Shadows of Deception series on Amazon. Really appreciate that. And without further ado, let's get to our guest. So, Luke, welcome back to the program. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be talking with you over in the Men's Adventure Discord, where chats back and forth, but it's nice to be able to sit somewhat face to face again. So thanks for having me.
Always. Well, congrats on The Fighting Heart of Man, which is your latest release. For those of you who are watching on the video, that's in the background.
Yeah.
So, and then, is that a work in progress you've got behind you, or another book?
This bad boy right here. This is Wilbur Smith's When the Lions Feed. This is one of my favorite adventure books. So if you guys haven't read this, peak like Spencer Dutton vibes, African hunter, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, nice. Well, we were supposed to have Nathaniel on with you, and at the time of recording this, there were prior obligations, which that happens. But I wish Nathaniel the best as well. So hopefully we'll have both you guys on here at some point. So I guess I wanted to start off, I talked to you in July of this year, and at the time, you hadn't even started the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast yet, but just podcaster to podcaster. I'm always curious, especially, I've been in podcasting for years now, but I'm always curious, what has your experience hosting the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast been like? You guys have done some amazing shows.
Thank you.
In my opinion. So just what has that been like so far?
It's been fun and kind of just it was an unexpected thing, Nathaniel, like you said, you can get his handsome mug right here on the front. He couldn't be with us because he's a grade A dad. His daughter's sick, so he's taking care of her. But him and I met via just like an Instagram ad that I ran, and from that spawned this friendship. We both realized we were obsessed with the kind of things like Wilbur Smith, Clive Cussler, any kind of adventure, Story 93, Spencer Dutton. Yep. And that friendship and those conversations just developed, and I think maybe he was the first one to say, we should just be talking about this on a podcast or on a video form of some kind, because it's all we want to talk about. And so we did. And it was also just a vehicle to be able to meet people like yourself and like Jake Widmer and the guys in the Discord. And it's just that's been the best part of it, is that it's been this community building experience for us to meet more friends who like the same kind of stuff we do. So that's my experience so far, is it's been just a blast and a great way to meet new friends.
Yeah, well, as a listener and as a participant in the Discord, I just have to say I really appreciate the community that you guys started, especially, um, like I think you'll agree that the men's adventure fiction genre is kind of a niche genre. When even now it's kind of a niche genre, but it is growing. And at the time we're recording this, like I just did my like Spotify Wrapped
Yeah.
thing, and I saw that W.S. Wentworth, of all of the guests I've had this year, and I've had a lot of them, W.S. Wentworth, who I don't know if he's done a podcast before, but he was actually the top rated episode, most listened to episode, at least on Spotify
It's amazing.
this year, which is amazing, and I'm honored, honestly, especially since like I don't check the stats that regularly, so I
Yeah.
knew his episode was doing good, but like I didn't know it was that good. But like when I started out in publishing, like I was told, well, if you write novellas, they'll sell, but they're not going to sell that well. And I think we've all kind of in the men's adventure fiction community kind of proven that theory wrong, that you need to write like novels in order for them to sell, well. So
Right, 100%. The men's adventure fiction, pulp, all this stuff, they're saying it's a bygone era, that it's, that's yesteryear's stuff. And I think, yourself, myself, Nathaniel, Wentworth, Widmer, everyone is proving that this is actually the future. And you guys just haven't caught up yet. They're like, people want short stories, people want novellas. And it's like, we got to bring back this dying breed. And if we're the ones to do it, we're the ones to do it. And I'm excited about this. I don't mean me, I mean all of you guys. You're the ones doing it.
yeah.
And so I'm so pumped about this. The fact that the community is getting this spark and this life, and Pulp Fest had its biggest attendance ever this year. The Men's Adventure Fiction podcast is growing, and we're trying to develop that there to get the, I guess, brand recognition out there for men's adventure fiction itself, to even just educate people on what that is and the roots of pulp, because
Yeah.
it is this market that was forgotten, but studs like yourself are bringing it back, which we love, and continue to do that because we want this genre to thrive again.
So, as far as the Fighting Heart of Man goes itself, what inspired you and Nathaniel to create this? It's a collection of short stories that you've got, right? What brought that on? I know you've published a lot of short stories on your website. So is it just a compilation of that, or just a mix, or
So I think
what?
only 2 or 3 of the stories were published previously. All the other ones of the 11 are new. And what kind of inspired it was, the same kind of vibe with the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast of like, we love men's adventure fiction so much, but what even is men's adventure fiction? How do you explain that to somebody? And that's hard because there's a lot of different genres and subgenres, and it's a whole mess what that genre is itself. And we just said, well, let's make the most men's adventure fiction book we possibly can. And the only way to really do that is let's make short stories. We want a pirate tale. We want a treasure hunter tale. We want a bounty hunter tale. We want a mountain man tale. We know all the different types of men's adventure fiction locked into these few pages. I think 190 pages or something like that. But it's the mixer of all the different types of men's adventure fiction, just to give someone like a sampler, right? Like a little taster, a little platter of all the different things you could have in the genre, and hopefully get somebody interested in reading more of this genre, picking up a Sam Whitfield book next, that kind of thing. Like, I want more of this.
Well, I'd be honored to contribute a short story in the next volume, and
Absolutely.
I also really appreciate you giving me the blurb for Blood Ties, by the way. I
Yeah, of course.
really appreciate that. And you've got some cool artwork in there, too, in the Fighting Heart of Man. So
Yeah.
that's great. Well, you guys are also involved with, a new company, too. You've got the logo, so talk a little bit about that as well. So
Yes, this is on my beanie. If you guys are watching, this is Veritas Entertainment. And you can find that on Instagram or Facebook to if you wanted to talk to Casey himself. My friend Casey got back from the military. He was in the 10th Mountain Division, and he came back and he wanted to get into entertainment. He wanted to start this entertainment company because from the time me and him were kids, we were making films in the backyard. And so his goal, his focus, after getting through the military was I want to make the types of films that I grew up making in the backyard. I want to make the type of media that we loved so much growing up. And so he knew I was making books on my own. And he said, what if I back you? What if we make this company? What if we work together and we kind of do something together? So he's made Veritas Entertainment, which is the final frontier for true entertainment, is kind of his tagline here. And it's trying to answer that question of, where did all the books go? Where did all the movies go that were made like they used to? Why don't they make them like they used to? He wants to answer that question and say, this is where they're at. This is old school, classic masculinity back in film, back in books. And so it's a really fun, exciting new development that Veritas is bringing all kinds of new possibilities to my life and to other creators, because that's the main part about Veritas is he was like, how many great authors to be are out there just being gatekept by the industry? And he's like, I want to give these guys opportunities. I want to give people a chance to get their book made into a movie, to get their book made and published. He wants to provide opportunities for the creators. And so it's going to be this creator driven, creator focused community to bring true entertainment back to the people.
awesome. Well, I would love to have him on
Yeah,
as well at some point, so maybe we could make that happen.
I can make that happen. Yep.
Yeah, I would really appreciate that. So as
Got my
far
cat.
as like projects that you guys are working on, I've seen, there are bits and pieces of like teasers of projects that you're working on, but I don't want to really like get into spoilers, but like what project specifically are you working on? Are there any motion pictures that
Yeah,
are going to be coming out soon, or
Yeah, I can tell you that the schedule, because he's a military guy, it's strategic, it's set out. I know exactly what 2025 is going to look like for
yeah.
me because of him. He has every month, kind of blocked out. And the things that we're able to talk about at this point are, I can tell you 2 films and 2 books that are coming out next year, which the 2 books are Noah Redford novels. And these aren't the only 2 books I'm going to be putting out, but the 2 of them are going to be Noah Redford novels. And 2 films are coming out. One's called The Crime Story, one's called The Boxing Story. These bare bones titles to just kind of bring you back to the classic, what the genre really was and what it could be. And so those are the 2 biggest things. If you like kind of gritty mafia crime stories, releasing one of those. If you like sports films, hard-hitting boxing films, we're releasing one of those in 2 separate halves of the year.
Nice. And you're acting in both of these too, or are you acting? Are you just mainly the writer, or
I'm hopefully not acting in one of them. We're getting things lined up with like actors in our area and trying to cast some people that may have a little more talent than me. But there's one role that I might have to fill because Casey wants me to fill it, and it might make the most sense. So I may end up being the project itself, but in the future, I don't think I'm gonna have a big acting career. That's not really my calling. I don't know if I have the talent for it, but
no?
that's the thing. If you're an actor, reach
Yeah.
out to us because we want to give everybody who doesn't have a chance, want to give them the chance.
Well, so that would kind of be my next question, I guess. What is it like working? I mean, I've done some screenwriting myself, but what is it like working for an actual, like, film/media entertainment company versus just writing, novels and nova?
Yeah, I guess for me, just in my own personal experience, what it is like more structured, more laid out schedules, more meetings, certainly I'm hopping on Zoom meetings, getting these strategic calls from Casey about like what's going to happen next. And just having more of a plan. When I was like a starving artist type of thing on my own, doing my thing, I was just, I'll write whatever I want, when I want, how I want.
Yeah.
It was a little more flippant, and I was kind of okay at, setting a release date, having a goal, getting something out, but I would never have sat there and been like, what is 2025 going to look like, and like month by month mapping out my year. I would have never done that. So with him and with the company, it's just been a little more, I guess, strategic and plotted out, if that makes sense.
Do you feel like that's changed your workflow as a writer for the books? Or because, like, I'll tell you, I've been, when I was in college, I was in a couple of film classes where, like, we had to, you know, be on a structured schedule because of, shoots or, production meetings or whatever have you. But, like, as a writer, I've always kind of been a pantser. Sometimes I'll write in the mornings. Sometimes I'll wake up, like, at 3 in the morning when I can't sleep, and I'll just write. So,
Right.
and I know that, at least based on, like, all the authors I've talked to, none of them have, like, a set schedule. But I'm curious if, this has changed your perspective as like a writer slash author, or if you're, if there are, like, two separate modes for Luke Goozdich, so to speak.
I think, what it's done is helped me button down, I guess, and be a little more professional because, like, to your point, I'm the same way with my writing. Sometimes I'll write it, 10 at night, because that's when I feel like I'm going to write.
Yeah.
I'm going to write till 10 till 12, or maybe it's in the middle of the day. Maybe it's 3 p.m. and I'm going to write there. That hasn't changed. It's just now deadlines aren't just for like when I have decided a deadline for myself. It's like there actually are deadlines. So I
Yeah.
have to be a little more, buttoned up. And it's like, okay, you better get your work done. It's kind of just like at work. If I have a task, if they're like, hey, I want these reports done, or I need this done by this date, I have to figure out a way to do it. And maybe my job's not structured where it's like, oh, I have to sit down and do it here all then, but it better be done by such and such date. So it has helped me just kind of put more pressure on myself to, like, okay, you have to at least get this done by the end of the week, whether that is at 3 a.m. or 4 p.m. Whenever, you just better buckle down and get this much done by this time, or you're going to be screwed.
Yeah. I would imagine, though, it also helps to be working with a team on some of that stuff, as opposed to, most authors, they kind of write in solitude, and then maybe they send off to an editor, or a couple friends to proofread or what. But I would imagine working with a crew is definitely different than just writing in solitude.
Yeah, the screenplays especially is where that will change. Is like for the boxing story, I'll write an act and then I'll take it to Casey and then we'll take it to some table reads and we'll like work through it and then I'll be sending it back. And I don't think that's how it's traditionally done. This is how Veritas is doing this because we are such a, bare bones production company right now in the beginning
Right.
stages. We have to really be tight with our budget. We have to be tight with our schedule. So we need to make sure that what I'm writing can stay within those perimeters. So we're taking an act at a time, getting things together. Boom, we stamp that out. Let's go. You can keep writing to act 2. So that has been like the most different. But screenwriting has always been different to me. So luckily
Yeah.
it doesn't feel too it doesn't throw me off. Like if I had to do that with my novels, that might throw me off.
And kind of to that end, have you had to change, like, any details from your? I'm not really asking for spoilers or any specifics, but kind of, in as much detail as you can. Have you had to adapt or change things differently, like from your written work compared to the screenplays at all, to make sure it translates to film better or stays within budget?
Yeah, I one thing I'll say about Casey, which is fantastic, is he tells me to don't ever worry about that. Just write it how it is, and we'll talk about it if there's an issue. And he's like, just don't put that limitation on yourself.
Yeah.
But I personally am more neurotic than that, so I am like, I think mentally putting those blocks on myself. Like,
Say
I gotta think, is this able to be shot or something like that? But I'm
same
told
here.
not to. Right. I think it's good to have your mind work that way. I'm
Yeah.
glad that Casey's saying have the creative freedom, but if you're gonna be realistic about it, which I think I'm just realistic to a negative end sometimes, where it can get in the way of whether it's creativity or ambition, it's like I will limit myself sometimes by being like, yeah, I think we could. Where me and Casey constantly differ is I'm like, I can do this with this many actors, and we don't have to do any more. And he's like, no. What do we want our movie to look like? We have 2 people on set. No. We can afford a bigger production. We're going to make this a bigger production, get more actors. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll write roller roles. But I'm constantly trying to be like, I'll limit this thing so that like nobody has to be in this. We don't have to get anybody.
Right.
And that's just how my mind works.
Yeah, no, like for an example, like my cousin who's an indie filmmaker, like he and we haven't really worked on anything, but like I sent him one of my short stories and was like, hey, what if we were to hypothetically, work on this as a screenplay? And it was one of the Blood Ties short stories, and he goes, well, we might have trouble, it might cost some money to like pay the cops so that like they wouldn't come in, and we might have to shut down like a street block to film this armored car scene, and then make sure that like the cops knew that we're filming and it's not like an actual armored car robbery, or just something, little things like that you might not think, would cost money, but like even the smaller things, they add up after a while.
100%. Yeah, permits, location, stuff like that, like you said, is a big one. Even things to your point of what you don't think of is if you do have a crew, if you do have actors, these people have to eat food, and you have to provide that kind of food. So even craft services will kind of like add up with money and things like that. Clive Cussler trying to take us out here. But yeah, there's a lot of hidden costs with filmmaking for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and I think at least, like I said, I'm not as involved in it as you, but just like from the small instances where I have been involved, it certainly makes me appreciate, even some of like the films that maybe aren't quite as high budget or high quality. I guess one of the things I am curious about is like with the whole, men's adventure fiction genre, like is there anything stylistically that you guys are looking at, like as far as like how you're going to film your your movies or anything like that?
I think a lot of that's going to depend on who ends up directing the particular project, because it's going to be a creator centric environment and community. So we're going to let that creator have the most control possible, where, however they want and they see it fit, let's go with that vision. Because if we're going to hire a director, we're going to work with a director, or, insert whatever writer, whatever you want to say. If you're going to work with them, you better trust them. And if you trust them, then why are you telling them how to do it and how to do their job and giving them all kinds of different notes all the time? It's like, I would love to see their vision. I would love to see how they take it. From the stories that I know that we're going to be doing, at least the boxing story I can touch on, because I'll have the biggest hand in that one as far as visually and creatively and things like that, because it's a story I've been writing since 2006. Like, it's the closest to a passion project or whatever for my life. That one will be very similar. If you follow my Instagram and you see like the old film aesthetic on all of my stuff, it's going to have a touch of that. Like, it's going to be somewhat grainy and things like that. So visually, I want it to have the identity of something that's a little more closer to like a 70s film. These film, like when there's that film texture, that film grain.
Right.
So I do love that. And that I can tell you for that project will be there.
Is the boxing story, I don't know quite how to ask this, but is the boxing story autobiographical in parts? Because I know that I know you yourself are a boxer or were in the past, and I also know that you shared it the last time that you were here that you also have a heart condition. So I'm wondering how much of that has influenced your writing and storytelling, or has it at all, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It is and is not at the same exact time. It is like in spirit, absolutely biographical or autobiographical, but in actuality, like the plot points, the story is not my life at all. But in spirit, where it talks about a guy, and basically in the, no spoilers and anything like that, but what essentially the key role here is that the main character suffers something, an injury of some kind that is going to shift his identity, and it's kind of him dealing with the aftermath of that. And that is one of the plot points that intertwines with a whole lot of other ones. But that particular story thread was very close to home for me and is autobiographical for me, when like with my heart condition and with my identity with boxing and my
Yeah.
history with boxing, being told, okay, the sport's no longer for you, that kind of thing. And to that point, it's not like the sport's over for him because he has the end fight in the movie. Clearly, he keeps fighting. But there are several twists and turns in that story that thematically hit touch points with my own mental health journey and things like that. So to answer your question in a long, rambling way, yes and no.
Yeah, I mean, that would kind of be my similar answer. People always think that because I have cerebral palsy, that like all my writing must tie to that somehow, and I'm like, actually, it doesn't really tie that much at all. Maybe one or two characters might, I think at some point when you create characters, you always, put yourself a little bit into, each of the characters, even some of the bad ones, you kind of put some of your negative traits into those. But I mean, I think definitely working through, at least for me, it's always been kind of cathartic to work through some personal problems writing characters.
Absolutely.
And one thing that you and I have in common that I didn't know until recently is that you're a huge Rocky fan, as am
massive.
I.
Nice, dude. Yes.
Is that what inspired you to get into boxing in the first place, or
a funny story is that Rocky is, yes, the reason I got into boxing. There was a day that my dad and I were home alone and there was a Rocky marathon on, and I remember watching all of that. He didn't like 5, so it was 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we watched together, and that day kind of solidified it for me. I remember going to the basement gym that my dad had there and trying to hit the heavy bag and trying to do push-ups and all that kind of stuff. Immediately was sold on boxing as a lifestyle, and that was when I don't even know how old, man. This was probably like 2003, 2004, something like that. And then cut to 2006. This is when the boxing story was born. Is just the way my brain worked up to that point. It never occurred to me in human history that anyone else could write a boxing story or a boxing movie or a boxing book, other than Stallone and Rocky. And then I saw Cinderella Man on TV in 2006 in my parents' bedroom.
Yeah.
And that's when it clicked for me. I was like, wait a second, there are other boxing movies? Okay, then I'm doing mine then, because Rocky's like my favorite thing of all time. So that was the moment that the boxing story was born. And I've been rewriting this bad boy every year since 2006, essentially. And that brings us to this iteration of it, which is my very favorite one. It has the best pieces from all of those different drafts finally locked in to one really interesting story. That's what I wanted to do more than anything, was like, how do you do something original in the boxing story genre? Everyone's seen everything, but this I think is unique and new, and I'm excited to reveal that eventually.
Boxing story, did you publish that on your website, or did you send that to me directly? Because I seem to remember reading either that whole story or at least part of it and being like really wowed by
that
it.
is a different boxing story. That is Between the Ropes, which is one of the short stories in this.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll have many boxing stories in my life. That one's called Between the Ropes, but this one, to not just keep referring to it as a boxing story, it's the boxing story A Faster Shadow, and that's a separate thing. I don't think anyone's read it yet outside of like Casey and a few people who know me in my personal life here. But
yeah, I get like, it's crazy now because I'm, in addition to writing, I'm also always beta reading the stories. So sometimes it's like hard to be like, is this what I'm reading, or
no? Yeah, that was definitely a boxing story, though. You weren't wrong. That was definitely one of them.
Well, it was a good one.
Thank you.
Let's see. As far as some of your other adventure stories, like you mentioned Noah, Redford. First off, I'm not sure if I asked you this question, but like, when did you create that character and come up with that concept?
It was a time where, this was February, I guess, of last year, probably, where I had just finished up like this run of adventure stories. Like I watched all of Yellowstone 1923, then I watched all of the Indiana Jones, and I just watched all the adventure movies and stories I could, and I was like craving more. I just wanted more so bad. and I was reading Louis L'Amour, and I was like just itching for another story, and I was like, I want something that just hits all of these. And I kept, going online, looking up more movies like Indiana Jones, more stories like Spencer Dutton, and trying to find something. And I was like, nothing is quite scratching that itch. So it's one of those scenarios where this was born directly out of like, I just want to read this. So
Yep.
I wrote Noah Redford basically to scratch the itch of like, how can I combine Noah Redford or Spencer Dutton with Indiana Jones with Rick O'Connell? I just want everyone in one tight package here.
Yep, that's essentially what I did with John Ryder.
Beautiful.
There has been like a James Bond film in 4 years at that point. John Wick, no, at the time I created him, like I think John Wick 3 had just like come out and they weren't sure if they were gonna do number 4, and then, Kiefer Sutherland keeps saying that he wants to do like a 24 movie or something to kind of close out Jack's story, but he's been saying that for like the last 10 years. So,
Yeah.
If no one is going to give Jack Bauer a proper ending, then one day I'll have to, kind of in John Ryder form, I guess. So,
That's perfect.
Kind of a mishmash of characters. I finished Frozen Wrath,
Nice.
which is your first book, and
Yeah.
I haven't started the next one, but I have all your books on my desk right here, actually.
Thank you.
And it's interesting because have you noticed, like I've definitely noticed that your writing has, improved, but like you've always been, at least from what I can tell, you've always had a solid, start as like an author. Do you feel like there's any one story where you feel like you've really hit your stride as an author compared to the others?
Yeah, I think visually you can see the change too, and it's when Vipers happens. The first two are like one size, and Vipers is the pocket size. And I think that's just the visual representation of when I kind of clicked into what I finally wanted to be as an author. I didn't realize kind of what men's adventure fiction and my place in it was, or kind of how to write in the way I wanted to, until Vipers and Red Rocks, when I was like, I want to keep that Louis L'Amour spirit, the men's adventure fiction pulp spirit alive within the new thrillers. Like I don't want to just do what everyone else is doing. I want to, like we talked about earlier, resurrect these older things like pulp and classic men's adventure fiction. I want to go more that route. And so I think Vipers and Red Rocks was the time I really came into that and saw like, okay, this is how I want to write. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's why I personally look back at Frozen Wrath and Retaliation Mountain and I'm like, nah, these just don't do it for me. It's like a little bit, it's like me, when I read it, it's like me writing as someone else, if that makes sense. It's just not fully me yet.
The one thing I really like about Frozen Wrath, though, and I'll have to reread Vipers and Red Rocks, but I really like you tend to write a lot in present tense. And that actually reminds me, I haven't read as much of Lou L'Amour's books, but I have read a lot of I'm not sure if you know Elmore Leonard's works all that well, but that's like a very Elmore Leonard thing. Is there any reason why you write in present tense just stylistically? I'm curious.
So yeah, I actually got my start writing in screenplays, and screenwriting was all I did until Frozen Wrath, and that's always written in present tense. So it was like kind of a leftover effect of that. So Frozen Wrath and Retaliation Mountain are written in present tense and written a little more like screenplays, but with somewhat novel on them. And then Vipers is when it's written more like a novel. So you're right. Some people may like Frozen Wrath and Retaliation more for that fact. Maybe they do like that writing style, because it definitely is dropped off a little bit in Vipers to focus more on prose and writing like a novel.
I wouldn't say I necessarily like it more or less, but it's definitely a bit different. And oddly enough, that's very similar to how I write, because like you, I started out writing short stories in middle school, but then once I took screenwriting classes in college, I kind of started writing that way.
Yeah.
And honestly, like the only reason why the Shadows of Deception books are in third person is because I'll write the first draft in, present tense, and then anytime I run it through like any, writing software like ChatGPT or anything like that, it puts into third person. So
Interesting.
that's been interesting as well. But other than that, it's like almost all my writing. Well, other than that, any writing projects for the future? Do you have any sequels planned for Vipers and Red Rocks planned?
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Yeah, and no release date set for this, but Vipers particularly will have. There's 2 sequels that will come from that. One is going to bring the character from Retaliation Mountain, O'Brien, and Hunter Moss from Vipers and Red Rocks together to kind of in a Die Hard with a Vengeance. I think is the one where they're running around to the telephones doing that whole domestic terrorist. It kind of brings them together for a terrorist-esque story, real-time thriller with them. And then there's another sequel that puts those 2 head to head, and they kind of are on opposing sides in that one. So there are 2 sequels to Vipers coming eventually. There's also a prequel to Frozen Wrath coming. If we're staying with that kind of same saga, is Dante Gibbs will return, and it'll show his time getting out of the special forces, starting the motorcycle club with his brother. And how I pitch that one is that it's like Magnificent Seven, but we're following the bad guys instead of the 7.
Yeah, I remember you saying when you first came on the podcast that you had a whole timeline planned out for kind of your characters. And I was kind of like, wow, that's crazy because like me too. And I thought I was the one that did that.
Yeah,
but,
it's fun.
Apparently not. That's good. That's great to hear. And I mean, I guess now, I mean, shoot, you're like super busy because you've got the author, business, and then you've got Veritas now. And then you've also got, your day job too, plus you're a dad. When do you have time to like sleep or spend time with your wife or anything like that? So,
Yeah, this is why I go to therapy, because I'm working on all these things. Sleep has been
yeah.
null and void for the past couple of months. It's like probably 4 hours or so a night. I need to get better at sleep because that's not good for your health. But yeah, sleep. I'd say I don't have an answer for sleep. But for hanging out with my wife and my kids and stuff, it's like first thing in the morning is when I get to hang out with my kids. Well, so from like 5-6 a.m. till like 11 when they go down for a nap, I'm mostly with them. Around that 10 to 11 hour, I might start to have to do some things for my day job and check my email and things like that. But there's a chunk of time in the morning, and then at night is when I get to hang out with my wife. It's like after the kids have gone to sleep. So those sandwiching everything else in between, and then that's why I don't go to sleep, because after my wife goes to sleep, I'm doing the stuff that I need to do, whether it's writing or having a meeting with somebody or whatever happens to prop up at midnight or 11 o'clock, things like that.
Do you work from home by chance?
A lot of the time, but I also go to the office for I run groups with kids on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
So like when it's group time, I got to be at the office for group. But other than that, I can correspond via email for a lot of the day.
Yeah, I work from home too. I'm actually, ironically, I'm a freelance writer, so like I can do that. So if I'm not writing one of my own projects, I'm usually working on like a blog or copywriting for someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely does help with being a writer and kind of pursuing this semi full time. I always tell people it definitely helps to have more availability during the day if you can. So.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and then like I said, you guys have been killing it as far as the podcast goes. I'm like 2 episodes behind, but it's pretty good. Any plans for the podcast, in the future, like so far, or anything you can announce, or?
We're keeping things rolling. I can tell you that there are more kind of meetups with me and Nathaniel. We'll get person to person again in real life and be able to produce more content in that same vein. Also, Veritas is trying to make it work so that we can get Nathaniel's handsome mug on one of these films, because he's the actor, right? I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
He clearly is. He's a freaking movie star in the making. It'd be awesome to get him in one of these films as well. So I'd say from the podcast front, look forward to us being able to meet in person and bring awesome content from that. Because what Nathaniel's doing with the Adventures of Wanderers, with his Nate Colt character, it's fantastic. And with Veritas, we're trying to just up what he's able to do and how frequently he's able to do it. So yeah, that's what I would say, is to look forward to way more than just the podcast coming from the podcast.
Yeah. And then, well, I mean, that all sounds good. And then is the Fighting Heart of Man, is that going to be a yearly release, do you think? Or, or are you going to do a second volume of this, or just see how things sell?
So Fighting Heart of Man Volume 1 implies definitely there's going to be Volume 2 and 3 and 4, but it's not going to be the only collection that me and Nathaniel do. So the next time you guys see us do a collection together, it will be in 2025, and there might be more than one. Keep, stay tuned. But the next one is not going to be Fighting Heart of Man. We haven't announced what it's going to be yet, but we're going to switch things up, and we're going to look at a different side of the genre. Because Fighting Heart of Man, this is all about classic heroism. It's about grit. It's about resilience. It's about overcoming. That's why we're, every 10 books, we're going to be donating books to St. Jude's Hospital. It's like all about the Fighting Heart of Man. But the next one might be about something a little bit different, a little bit darker, maybe a little bit stranger. We'll see. But it's that is our announcement for now, is that it's going to be a separate new collection.
Well, that all sounds great, man. And anything you need, Whitfield Report and Right to Offend Media is happy to help you with that. So you're doing great work, and I really appreciate you coming on. And hopefully we'll get to chat to you, a lot more in the future, and also with Nathaniel too. So anything you want to promote before we sign off here?
Just want to promote you, Mr. Sam. I mean, you guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to everything Sam's doing. Buy all Sam's books. This guy's the man, and I appreciate for what you do for the community and everyone involved in the Discord. I'm just thankful for you and having us on here and being able to promote Fighting Heart of Man with you. Just wanted to say thank you to you, and I appreciate you and your listeners. So thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to plug the Discord, because that's mainly where you can find all of us online.
Right.
And that's been a amazing community to be a part of. And I think, just kind of echoing what you said earlier, I think the whole thing with you finding out what men's adventure fiction is, I think the definition is ever evolving and ever changing, because it's like, yeah, you do have like the classic, pirate, treasure hunter adventures, but then you also have like really dark, like revenge, tales on like the opposite spectrum, and then everything in between.
Sword and sorcery, all of the different genres in there. Superhero stuff gets thrown in there if you look at like the old pulps and
yeah, it's crazy. That's the other wild thing, is that like, is that people are like just rediscovering pulps as like the precursors to comic books. But I'm all for it. So all right, man. Well, if I don't get the chance, I mean, I know we'll talk offline beforehand, but if we don't get the chance to talk on the podcast beforehand, have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and we'll see you in Veritas in the new year.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Merry Christmas, and I'll talk to Casey and get him on here to talk to you as well about Veritas in a little more detail.
Yeah, man, absolutely, sounds good. Well, thanks for coming on, and thank you folks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the live stream on Wednesday. So, take care.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless, God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.